Electrocast. This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop early holiday deals now.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Western demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or Whatever Movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up, and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Mr. Downstairs.
Today we're talking a movie from 2024, Longlegs. Hey, so Wes.
Yes?
How was your morning?
Fine, you dirtsy, flirtsy old angel bitch.
What did you do this morning?
I watched Longlegs for the second time. First thing, opened my eyes, started watching Longlegs.
What a way to start your morning, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and watching Longlegs.
Yep.
So I watched Longlegs last night, and then I had to cleanse the palate or the mind before going to sleep because, woof, Longlegs.
Osgood Perkins, our director, has said that Silence of the Lambs, he wanted to cozy up right next to it for this movie.
The parallels didn't go too far. Tonally, there's a vibe. There's the rookie novice FBI agent who approaches her casework tenaciously, but maybe with a little bit more vulnerability than her seasoned superior boss guy. I'm trying to think which villain is more menacing because they're completely different. You know, Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter is restrained and Deli's not, and refined. Whereas Nicolas Cage's Longlegs, oh man, Wes, I have so many questions for you.
Wait, do you mean Dale Ferdinand Kobble? 3 names, serial killer style?
Dale Ferdinand Kobble, yes, a.k.a. Longlegs, played by Nicolas Cage.
Do you know that Micah Monroe, star of Longlegs and the great It Follows, one of the best horror movies in recent memory, our discussion available now at orwhatevermovies.com, had never seen a Nicolas Cage movie?
She didn't watch any of the movies featured in Nicolas Cage month at orwhatevermovies.com?
I have to assume. It seems unlikely, but she said, because Osgood Perkins never let her see Nicolas Cage as Longlegs in character in makeup until she walked into the interrogation room and he called action. That was the first time she saw Nicolas Cage and she was terrified. The story's been going around that they had her mic, her lav mic, and it picked up her heartbeat. That was like 170 beats a minute. And they used that audio of her heartbeat in some of the promotional stuff.
Ew.
But she said it was absolutely insane. As you know, he's completely transformed. There's no trace of Nick in there. His voice, his mannerisms, he was very much method on this. So it was in character, and it's very disturbing character to say the least. She's saying there's no Nic Cage in Longlegs, and I'm going to argue that Longlegs was the most Nic Cage. And therefore, I have to assume she has never before seen a Nic Cage movie.
This has just got to be, because how do you not see Nicolas Cage in his character of Longlegs?
The mummy, daddy, like all that stuff. Like it was Face Off. There was so much Nicolas Cage in this. I cannot see, you know how sometimes they do the thing online where it's promoting a movie when people like go take a picture with the wax figure or something and it's really Arnold Schwarzenegger. If I walked into a room with Longlegs sitting at a table, had no context and didn't know who that person was, and he started talking, I'd be like, Nicolas Cage, is that you? I'm not even 100% sure they made him up or chose that wardrobe.
Stop. I have a feeling that this was just your coping mechanism for how just disturbing the Longlegs character is. You had to hold on to something, and so you held on to the fact that it was Nicolas Cage so that you weren't perpetually terrified after having seen this film. I was definitely looking for the Nic Cage in there. The filmmakers don't give us a really great glimpse of Longlegs until very far into the film. So I'm like looking around corners of the screen. I'm trying to will the camera to pan up just so I can get a better glimpse of this character who I actually don't want to see, because I think the Longlegs character's face is a face you can't easily forget.
Oh, this is what Kelly's mom says. She says that she doesn't want, and what the sneak echoes, she says that she doesn't want to watch movies like this because some things, once they get in your brain, won't go away. Those images are there forever. And the sneak sees these images haunting her in her haunted apartment at night. And that's fair, I suppose. Longlegs, if nothing else, is full of haunting images.
His face is just, I don't know what was wrong with it. I mean, obviously he was pasty, but there was this like bulbousness and this unevenness to like just his, not the texture. It was just like the surface was just so unpredictable and unsettling. And did you notice that they also aged him up and down? Like the younger Longlegs was just a little bit less disturbing than the older Longlegs.
I don't recall who said it. I don't know if it was Perkins, our director, or it was Nicolas Cage, who said that his face was the result of too many plastic surgeries.
Oh,
And I guess if he were having consistent plastic surgeries, it would get worse over time. The more he has Michael Jackson's style.
Yep.
But you would think that plastic surgeries are always more smoothing, when that kind of wasn't the case here.
Well, it kind of depends on what the surgery is. I mean, if it's a facelift or something, then yeah, you're going for a smoothing effect. But maybe he was going for like fuller lips or like cheek implants or something.
Someone had also said that he is like a glam rocker type. And then someone else also said he was prior a glam rocker musician. But given the number of times that Nicolas Cage sings very Nicolas Cage style, I cannot imagine that Longlegs was actually a singer. Because Happy Birthday, pretty atonal, pretty bad. But we do know that to some extent, at least, Nicolas Cage can sing. He does it in The Family Man, our review available now to our podcast. And he's done it in a couple other movies where he sings not as badly as Longlegs does.
True. He could have been the T-Rex guitarist, or at least the one tuning the guitar at the top of the film, because that was also a vibe. Can I get to some questions that I have about Longlegs that maybe you can answer?
Yeah.
Why doesn't the first serial killer shoot Harker? Why does he spare Harker? Why does he turn himself in?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was going to say because she doesn't appear with her partner on the porch. He shoots the guy and she like collapses against the doorway, but then she goes into the house, very Clarice Starling style in Buffalo Bill's house. But I guess she had him dead to rights by the time she got upstairs. Maybe he wasn't expecting it. I was more, if she turns to the house and says he's there, the serial killer is in that house. He's in there right now. That's when you call. Backup doesn't exist in this movie. Nobody calls for backup ever, number one. Number two, if you know that the serial killer is in there, you draw your gun and you insist your partner do the same. Or you at least cover him when he goes to the door, when he's just doing a routine knock and ask. I think stylistically it was necessary. Why did he retreat into the house and go upstairs? He didn't like barricade himself in. It was an indication that maybe she wasn't a factor. As a matter of fact, her mom was being used as his accomplice to keep Lee alive. And maybe the point of a Longlegs influenced killer wasn't to kill Lee.
Well, you're saying that the first serial killer had something to do, was associated in some way with Longlegs?
I assume so. She did the psychic thing, and does she do the psychic thing for all cases? Or does it seem to be when she's involved in this case because her mom is a Satanist and has all these direct connections to Longlegs, and thus she has a connection?
If there is a connection between the first serial killer and Longlegs, I still think it's inconsequential to the story. I saw that whole sequence as a means of just introducing us to the Harker character, but also her psychic abilities, and also as a means to get her on Agent Carter's radar so that, he finds her ability intriguing and that it could potentially kind of crack this cold case that's been going on for 30 years.
And somewhat charming and innocuous. She's instantly creepy with Carter's family. And then the little girl's like, "You want to see my room?" And I get it. We have to be introduced to Carter's family so we have some context for what happens later on. But would you let your little girl take the weird, awkward FBI agent into her room? Like,
at midnight?
She didn't even speak. It was weird. It was weird.
I wouldn't. No, to answer your question.
And it was because I was getting weird vibes like, is she Longlegs?
Yep.
And I felt pretty early on that she was at least connected to Longlegs, so that she gave me a distinctly creepy vibe. Mike and Monroe plays this very different from It Follows, where she was very outwardly emotional. And here, this one, she's much more cold.
Mm-hmm. She definitely gave me some creepy vibes, and her creepy remote house was also creepy.
The cabin in the woods?
Yeah. So was that Longlegs in her home?
There had to be someone in her home because Longlegs left the card.
Right.
The weird birthday card.
Yep.
She did leave the door open when she goes outside
Yes.
to investigate. But then why does she break the chain of forensic evidence or whatever and open the frickin' card with her back to the house in that conspicuously framed doorway? You don't know that he's gone? Did she assume that he was gone because the birthday card was dated? She did the thing again where she's in her house with the thing, and then it was like a video game where she sits down and she's like, now the danger is past. Now it's time to solve the puzzle, to decrypt the cryptic letter. And there's no possibility of a killer thing happening right now because that part of the video game is over.
Exactly. Why, when you see somebody in your home, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to either pursue them because this is your turf and you've got home court advantage and you're also trained FBI agent, or you're going to leave and call for backup.
This house is not clear.
What's that?
This house is clear is from Poltergeist.
Oh. I don't even know. It wasn't even clear if she told Agent Carter that Longlegs was in her house.
One would have to assume she handed him the card or whatever, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's significant that Longlegs has made contact, not only with her, but with, by virtue of contacting her with essentially with the case, like acknowledging that she's a part of the case. So that whole thing was very confusing. Like, I'm assuming it was Longlegs, but it should have been a much bigger deal if it was.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is Agent Harker psychic?
Yeah, or at least what Carter called half psychic. She definitely knows things, and I have to assume that's because of this weird connection or because of her doll, her Annabelle doll or whatever, and whatever was in her head that's in the phantasm metal ball brain doll brain that her mom blows away later that kind of snaps her out of it, I guess. She's like, "Hi, Mom," and she's like, "Lee? Like, who else is it going to be? Yes, it's still me, Lee, your only daughter."
Still your only daughter.
Yeah. And I was annoyed by how annoying the mom was. And I was like, oh, God. But then it all came around when in her exposition or whatever, and you could see the trauma of years of being Longlegs' accomplice and how she's really shut down, put up this wall. She's compartmentalized emotionally. And that driftiness, that sort of vague thing felt better to me after the fact. But boy, she was annoying at first. I wonder if Lee had some touch of that. You know what I mean? This sort of under the influence, being guided and going through the motions, and yet she's solving these crimes, being assigned to the case. Because when she goes in those trances, she's kind of impenetrable and a little bit annoying.
Agent Harker.
Yeah, but it's sort of like her mom. And I wondered if that was like bleeding over.
I can see that, yeah. But the problem with the psychic thing is that it doesn't pay off. I mean, is she just a little touched, or how do her psychic abilities serve the plot?
What we have here is a vessel of Satan in Longlegs who is implanting Horcruxes into these dolls and then having Lee's mom put them in the houses of people who are then immediately controlled. Longlegs is like Manson. He never enters the property or anything like that. There's no forced entry. Let me tell you, if a crazy nun showed up on my doorstep and was like, "You've won. Here's a creepy doll that looks like your child. Please let me in." That mind control stuff must take effect immediately, because I would slam the door and deadbolt it. But whatever. So it's kind of a cheat because it's supernatural, but they need practical means to get the supernatural element into the home. It doesn't creep through the vents or under the doors or anything. So is it effective, or is it just how is this all connected? It's connected by supernatural means, and Longleg's death doesn't mean it's over. It means he's free and stuff. It felt sort of cheaty, and thus I was annoyed when I was like, she's psychic. Come on, it's a little bit too easy. You can do anything if either the hero or the killer or both are psychic.
Right, but then beyond the first case where she knows that the killer is inside a specific house, I don't really see her psychic abilities serving her. She certainly doesn't see it coming with her mom, and it doesn't even necessarily help her find or connect with Longlegs, so it seems like a little bit of an unnecessary layer that serves to undermine the groundedness of the story that already has a lot of elements that test my patience, they test my reasoning and rationality. So I think we should operate on these assumptions, though, that there is something magical or occult going on with these brain things. I mean, there's literal black smoke coming out of her head when Ruth Harker shoots the porcelain doll that looks like her daughter. I mean, that wasn't just something that we were given some kind of visual clue, like some kind of smoke or something is literally released from her head when her twin doll is murdered.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Toulousma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Toulousma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
She killed Agent Asian to protect her daughter, and then she killed the Lee Harker doll that she's had presumably since she was a little girl, and that set her free. The poof of smoke released from her brain was this hold that Longlegs had over her so that she wasn't affected in the room when all the Carters went nuts. But she was kind of affected because she shows up and then Carter goes into the kitchen and kills his wife. And then when he comes back with the knife, then she's like, oh, crap, and pulls her gun and shoots him. Why would she let him kill the wife?
Exactly. Why? She knows exactly what's going to happen. He says as much before they go into the kitchen. I'm going to be right back. You're going to stay in the kitchen.
So they're all under a spell or whatever, but not Lee, but kind of. It was a little bit inconsistent in the way the rules work, but I wonder if it would have been as effective without the supernatural element, without knowing that there is an evil and Satan is all over the place and guiding Mr. Downstairs is guiding Longleg's hands, and he's like a capo or whatever, orchestrating the movies on a terrestrial plane or some junk. If none of that is real, then him with all his Hail Satan, he's just a nut job. He's just like a religious fanatic.
Which is what I was kind of expecting from this. I was expecting it to be, Sherlock Holmes style. Everyone's saying occult, supernatural, but there's a rational explanation for this. And there wasn't. There's magic Satanism going on.
You're right, but that excuse, that convenience to allow for, oh, this really is all connected. Oh, and this is how, forensically, he wasn't present for all of these killings. He must have had an accomplice or whatever. The evil is kind of a cheat, but it doesn't account or allow for the other inconsistencies of the movie. Like, why was the doll in the barn under the crucifix when they went to What's-Her-Nuts' house?
The camera house, that was Longlegs' clue that he left for Harker.
Was Carter always being positioned as a victim to get to Harker? Why did he didn't need Harker. Why did he had the mom? Why would he want to draw Harker's attention to furthering, solving the case?
Well, Longlegs was compelled to complete his algorithm. I think maybe the Carter family met that need in creating the satanic symbol in the calendar. See, this is the problem with Longlegs, is that we're given just enough that I feel like I can start piecing together the pieces of this puzzle, but it all kind of ends up with, it's just crazy, and the Longlegs guy is just crazy, and to make sense of crazy is crazy making. And I've come to a point in my life where ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, if you're going to go down a rabbit hole, if you cannot follow logical pathways, it's frustrating more than anything. And only the truly insane or meth-addled would attempt such a thing. To your point, I think the movie is a sort of an exercise in style. There's all this, the algorithm and stuff, it's all in the code. It's all an implication that there's a much deeper world, a more profound world where all of these clues and stuff, everything is rich with meaning. And yet ultimately it's kind of a hokey supernatural doll movie. and like a crazy singing, screaming Nicolas Cage movie. Remember May, December when they do the, oh my God, we're out of hot dogs in the fridge?
And they do the sting?
Yeah, they were kind of empty frames looking outside or pushing in on a location that's empty. And they did like a little musical sting, and our eyes are searching. Where is Longlegs back there? Like he was behind the house in the very beginning. Is Satan back there? And our eyes, our imaginations fill in the gaps, or they're looking for something to hold on to. And I think this movie was giving us enough of a framework that it was hoping that the filmmakers were hoping that we would populate it with our own nightmares.
And that was effective. Like we got that 4x3 frame that was, I think, supposed to evoke like a period beyond the period that our story is set in. It was really dark and moody. I think a lot of the misdirects were supposed to be us being in the shoes of our character, trying to figure this out and piece it together as we go along. So it was like kind of, intended to keep us on our toes, but it ultimately raises more questions, I think, than it answers, story-wise, which ultimately makes it feel unsatisfying. I mean, Ruth Harker is such a confusing character. She was obviously off to begin with, but was she converted to a Satanist? Did she need to be a Satanist in order to be Longleg's accomplice? If her only mission was to save her daughter, it certainly seemed like she was on board by the time we get to the Carter house.
Maybe in a Manson kind of way. He didn't murder them, but at least allowed that she could be his accomplice because he sniffed this susceptibility, her corruptibility. You know what I mean? The Manson family followers are a certain kind of person. Maybe he saw her and was like, I could really use you, Let's get you to reach your full potential or something.
And this was the extent of the Longlegs network, right? Was it just Longlegs and Ruth Harker? Or was there something deeper, more widespread and insidious about the Longlegs network that I'm missing?
That's exactly what they want you to think, that this is deeper, that there is more. Maybe it's, I don't know. And I don't know that they were necessarily implying that, but he understands that they're coming for him. He's waiting with his suitcases packed. He knows they're coming. If you're going to go and try to arrest or surprise a serial killer, you don't go with sirens blaring, but he knew that they were coming. And maybe he just could sense that they had a mental connection or something. It seemed like it was just them, because I was, like you, very much on the fence about this movie. I watched it twice now. To be honest, the first time I didn't get a lot out of it, and while I was reminded of most of the key things in this movie, I needed to revisit it. When she wakes up after her mom blows the doll ball brain out of her head symbolically or whatever, and she's in Longlegs' lair, his workshop or whatever, and then goes upstairs into her mom's house, I was like, oh, and didn't really make those connections.
You didn't make those connections the first time? You didn't make the connection the first time that Longlegs lived in downstairs from Ruth Harker?
correct. He's Mr. Downstairs, or became Mr. Downstairs himself. But I was like, oh, she has his car or whatever now that he's dead. And it was a little bit all over the place with the imagery and I guess symbolism. And I did catch that this time, which allowed for more of a connection. But it seems like Ruth's house was the headquarters for the Longlegs operation.
Right. Longlegs Inc. So because they cut to this shot of Longlegs in bed, he's all Buffalo Bill, like downstairs with the candles going and stuff. When they cut to that, nothing happens. And I was like, okay, that was random. And then I thought, maybe you can validate this having seen it a second time. When I thought back to it, I thought, oh, I think there was a Lee Harker scene basically just upstairs, and he's like listening, or he's literally right there underneath her feet, and she doesn't realize that. I think that was the significance of that shot.
Interesting. That echoes what the agent said. Where is he now? He's downstairs, right below your feet.
Oh, right. Yeah. There's this downstairs metaphor that's very pervasive.
Yeah, and for how weird and sort of disparate these images are, at least upon first viewing, there was a lot I gleaned from the second viewing. And so I do believe that Osgood Perkins, which, by the way, you're aware, is Anthony Perkins' son from Psycho?
No, I'm not. Whoa.
And now that doesn't allow him credibility. Just because he's the son of Anthony Perkins, it actually, in my book, puts him at a deficit to start. He has to prove himself as a filmmaker so that there's no nepotism happening here. Osgood Perkins seems to have put a lot of thought and organization into the framework of this. That thing that we just talked about right beneath your feet, the fact that Lee solves the crime. He's making the father's kill using the dolls and magic. And Carter's like, yeah, something like that or whatever. That's exactly what's happening.
Right.
And all these connections are in place. The doll imagery is super confusing right away. It's like, wait, is that a doll? Is that Satan? Is that a Satan doll? And later on, when it all is all explained, second time around, you're like, oh, now I see why they're showing this imagery. It's a little bit more telling. So the organization, it feels messy and disorganized. I wonder if it's intentionally so that when you're saying, what was the adjective you used? Unsatisfying.
Sure.
But is it unsatisfying or is it unsettling? Is it dismaying and meant to keep you confused and jolted and horrified?
Longlegs is profoundly unsettling, but ultimately I think it's unsatisfying because of its inconsistencies and because of its inability or refusal to kind of complete the picture. This just is a supernatural movie, but why is it grounded in what otherwise seems like our 1995 reality? Because it raises more questions than it ultimately answers for me, I feel cheated and or like I need to do the work, the extra work to have it make sense, which I mean, do I really want to spend that much time in the Longlegs universe?
I've been in there all morning. He has acknowledged that it not only looks like Silence of the Lambs, but is meant to be a companion piece to that movie, in that we want to get back and familiar and cuddly in that world, and then transition over to the world of Longlegs to have that piggybacking off of that experience, that feel. And 7 also is one that other people have cited. And 7 was 1995. So I feel like it was deliberate for that time period when it wasn't easy with technology or forensics or DNA evidence kind of thing. It wasn't as easy. It's a 90s feel.
I get it. Osgood Perkins was going for a thing. And I was pretty jazzed about the open, about the tone that he was setting. I do feel like the first third, if not the first half of Longlegs, is not only really effective, but I tracked it and I was excited to see where it was going to go. Ooh, how are they going to get themselves out of this? How are they going to explain this? How are the filmmakers going to wrap this all up? I'm so excited. I hope it's not, a total case of Deus Ex Machina. And then ultimately, I feel like they kind of found her at the end.
Very curious, because I had almost an opposite experience. I needed to be pulled into Longlegs, and I was like, come on, make it better. It doesn't make sense that she didn't have her gun drawn. I don't care that she's psychic. That's annoying to me. She's kind of trying to solve the case. Her mom is weird, and I was like, what is happening? And I wasn't drawn in like the way I was for the 20th viewing of Silence of the Lambs. I'm immediately pulled into that world and feel the dread. Not so much. And I was leaning towards a below the line, whatever rating on Longlegs until I was reminded of how much it comes around in the end. If it's not a satisfying ending, because it's definitely not, the exposition and tying everything together at least allowed me to be at peace with the confusion and frustration I felt up top. I just think it justifies what was real hesitation on my part. When movies are really touted as being the next Silence of the Lambs, I'm like, take it easy there, bub. I'll be the judge of that. And it has a lot to live up to. But I actually was brought around and have decided to give Longlegs an all right rating because of how carefully I could see everything was orchestrated. Going back, there are no random images. We just don't have real association for them the first time we watch them. I feel like I got much more, and I love when that happens. It's just I wasn't looking forward to watching this one again.
And I don't blame you. I don't buy that this is so meticulously crafted that it all makes sense, ultimately. But even if it did, I think I'm just not willing to put in the legwork. Get it? Legwork?
The legwork.
In order for it to ultimately make sense. Was I bored? No, I was riveted, but ultimately frustrated and let down by Longlegs, and for that reason it is a boring. Is Longlegs the Satanist's favorite movie?
I'm sure that it is for lots of people. It wasn't the lesson learned like American History X, where neo-Nazism is bad and okay. Satan kind of wins.
Satan wins in Longlegs. And that's our discussion on Longlegs, a movie from 2024. And another part of Halloween 2024 here at Or Whatever Movies. Check out 4 other years of Halloween programming at orwhatevermovies.com. 400 plus episodes wherever you get podcasts. And let us know what you think about them, because we'd love to hear from you. 818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and happy Halloween.
Hi, I'm Mark. And I'm Peter. We're the founders of Electrocast Media, bringing you great podcasts like Nightmare Road Stories, Tech Talk Revolution, and Bodacious Minds.
Electrocast networks include Ruby for female empowerment, the Best Business Network, and GPN for geopolitics. We built this company to create community and amplify diverse voices, and we really appreciate your support.
So, keep listening to Electrocast podcasts and hear the culture.
Electrocast.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily Podcast from Electrocast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electrocast. Electrocast.